Live from Aberdeen, it's Watching Worst Films with your hosts Jericho Reed and Kyle Szymanski and musical guest Buster.
Hello. Hello and welcome to Watching Worst Films. We are ordinarily your guide to Razzie history, but as we are up to date with our Golden Raspberry winners, we're now just bringing you weird and wonderful selections of films we want to talk about.
And also, it's the threat that I've done for the past 2 years of turning this into a SNL podcast. It's slowly becoming a reality.
We're beginning our evolution. So, to bring you up to date, this is something which we've been following the development of this project, isn't it? We mentioned this on the podcast when it was announced, and we said immediately, we need to cover this.
Yes, 100%.
Because if you haven't read the episode description, this is our episode on Saturday Night.
Yes.
The 2024 Jason Reitman film about the first episode of Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
And so I can't remember what episode we bring it up on, but it's announced.
Many.
And I'm like, this is the perfect movie for me and you,
100%.
because you, of course, are Saturday Night Live obsessive. Is that
I don't know. I don't even know why. Again, I've said this many times. Most of it's shit, but I do love it. I think some of the institutional part of it is what I like as well, and I've kind of fallen down the rabbit hole over the years.
Yeah.
Since about 15 years ago when I binged SNL. I've just kind of stuck with it.
Was there any reason for your binge? Like, were you in a dark place
No,
in your
not at all.
life?
So I grew up, I've said this before, I had some DVDs of Sandler and Ferrell and someone else, and maybe a couple of compilation DVDs. So I kind of knew
Sandler, Ferrell, and Rob Schneider.
No, it was God, I'm sure the other one was just a general best of.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew SNL, and then I didn't fall in love with it until it came on Sky Arts. Which was the first 5.
2016.
It was
Presidential election just occurred.
it was about
Single spotlight on a piano.
It was about 2010 though, and they showed the first 5 seasons almost on a loop. You know, they just every Friday or Saturday or whatever it was, they put it on.
From
Friday, and I fell in love with it because the golden years are fun. They are funny. There's misses, of course it is, but there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of good comedians, a lot of good writers, a lot of really good musical hosts, which also kept me in there.
Yeah.
So I went to see George Harrison, I went to see the band, I went to see Bob Dylan, I went to see all these guys play. So yeah, it was a really good hour to spend.
Yeah.
You get a couple of laughs, I get some weird stuff, a funny video, I think about comedy a lot, and I kind of go into it so much in my head. And then after that,
can we get you to pitch that to Will on the phone?
I can pitch it better than Lauren. And then after that, you kind of go, well, what's next? What? And then I started falling into like Eddie Murphy holes.
Yeah.
I want to see the 80s. I want to see. Obviously, we are both huge Simpsons fans. So when you hear like the late 80s, it's like Conan O'Brien and the Odenkirks and Phil Hartmans and George Meyer. So many people go from SNL to the Simpsons. Schwartzwelder as well. So I was like, right, I have to see the Simpsons years.
Yeah.
And they're great. I love them.
Yeah.
So then after that, it was just kind of pick and choose, like go through the years. There's certain years I fucking hate. I hate the Will Ferrell years, despite loving Will Ferrell. I hate some post 2012, most of it, but So overall, I'm gonna say I probably like less than a quarter of SNL, but I am big fan and quite a well of knowledge, unfortunately, on it as well. So that's my experience. And
that's your answer to, are you an SNL fan? Yes. So Kyle is an SNL fan, and I am maybe a Jason Reitman fan. At any rate, I love Cooper Hoffman. I love Rachel Sennett. And so when they were announced in the cast, I was like, this is a perfect one for me and you.
Yes.
And if you listened to our last episode, you'd have heard that I saw this film at the London Film Festival as the surprise film. So I cheated on you with that viewing there. But it's now available through less than legal means.
Still not in this country yet, actually. So a very advanced screening.
Jason Reitman came down and was like, hey guys, I've got a cut just to test out for UK audiences. I don't know, is this joke going to play? Have you got any feedback? Do we need to dub this with Andy Peters like they did for You know, like those things interest me, like how Andy Peters is in Toy Story 2 or Jonathan Ross is in Shrek 2. And for international audiences, it's someone else.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Like, I do enjoy those little regional changes they make.
That is a big thing with SNL in general, though, is like the regional changes is... You know, a lot of things, especially they don't cross over, and then you add 50 years on top of that.
A British person being a fan of SNL is odd.
It is odd, isn't it? Yeah, it is very odd. Yeah.
Because I remember people used to ask me, like back in my school days, they were like, "How do you know so much about like U.S. presidents?" I was like, "Well, Gerald Ford was in an episode of The Simpsons."
Well, again, it's exactly that. I need probably Gerald Ford more from SNL. I know Woodrow Wilson from
Gerald Ford. Hey, he falls over a lot, doesn't he?
He's a lot like Chevy. So like, I'm going to be honest. We've spoke about this as well before, but the osmosis or whatever of American culture to me was huge.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, probably feel more American in my head than British at times, especially when it comes down to comedy and music and things like that. I do cross the pond.
Well, when you have Mrs. Brown's Boys or SNL, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? So we have watched the film now, and we are here to present our coverage of it.
Yes.
So, starting off with our usual things, Kyle, on a budget of $25 to $30 million, how much do you think this made?
I'm going to go with 40 to 50.
Okay. Because it's not done. I think it still has to be released in other territories, but these territories don't really know SNL, so it will have made them.
I've been so off recently on like returns.
Yeah,
used to be my pride and joy, but I think this is going to make money. I don't think it'll make much money.
Yeah,
it's very niche.
Yeah. Okay, so it made $9.8 million.
Oh, fuck.
Which I probably would have predicted something like that, because like. Good movies lose money. Nothing makes money anymore. If you're not a franchise, then if you're not Deadpool versus Wolverine, like we spoke about it on our last episode, when you see like the number 23 outgross The Substance several times over, and The Substance is like a massive hit. Yeah. Like massive hits now don't make the money that like a mediocre movie made.
I'm also going to say though, a little surprised the budget's that high. I know the cast's relatively huge, but they're not.
They're not names really, no. And the names are friends of Reitman who'll be like, J.K. Simmons isn't going to be charging.
Exactly. And then it's all filmed in 30 Rock, so...
Yeah, it's
I don't understand where the 30 million... You could have probably... I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
I think 25 million is low budget.
Stupidly low for this day and age.
Like,
but this is a low budget
I don't think
movie.
you can make this cheaper, really, without cutting corners.
I'm going to say now then, it's not going to make its money if it hasn't already.
It's going to make 20 million in the UK where no one knows or cares.
Fuck all here.
Yeah. Okay. So, starting off, the podcast doesn't go on because it's ready. It goes on because it's 11:30. Yep. So we start with a quote from Lorne Michaels. Mm-hmm. And then, do you know a little bit of trivia to test out your SNL credentials? Do you know what day the first episode went
I don't
on?
Actually, no.
Okay, October 11th. Okay, because it flashes up and says October 11th, 1975.
I do remember that quote at the start. I've read that in books or I've seen it in interviews or something.
Yeah.
Because that is systematic to how SNL really is.
Yeah.
It is very unprepared. It is very shambolic and chaotic.
Yeah.
Not always the best way to do shows, but... whatever. I subscribe by that philosophy. So
I think like I don't know, from when like I was in student TV at university, I think that sort of weekly commitment is good. I think that can get some interesting results if you just force yourself to do something. Yeah. Like the quality control isn't perhaps going to be the highest.
Yep.
But that just sort of relentless. I really like that. I think that's one of the things it's got going for it massively. And so then we get the Stranger Thing kid out flaring on the street, who is also from Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yeah. There's a connection. Again, I hope he didn't get paid.
$22 million went to Finn Wolfhard.
And he's distracting as well. I'm not looking at
what?
No, come I'm not going to jump on.
We're 30 seconds in. We can't be coming out and bringing out the knives.
I don't like Wolfhard that much. I don't. As an actor, I'm sure he's a lovely guy.
My brother met him actually at TIFF. My brother spoke to him at the Toronto Film Festival. And said that he was just trying to pretend not to know who he was and just have a normal conversation with him.
So he is He's unnamed though, isn't he? I don't think he's...
He's unknown NBC page. Yeah.
Jobs for the boys.
Okay, my next quote is Kaufman, because that's who... So, the Stranger Thing is out flyering, trying to drum up interest, and Lorne Michaels is looking for the talent to arrive, and emerges out of an NYC cab is the 9-foot frame. Oh, his mum drops him off. Yeah,
which is true as well. Because this is when I watched it with my girlfriend Sophie, and there a few times she was like, "Is that real? Do you know if that happened?" Trying to test the trivia.
Yeah.
I believe he was dropped off with his mum, and I also believe reading that he did stay in character in the first few episodes. Like,
I can see
he did not break for a while. So yes, he wasn't, however, 9 foot tall.
So we'll talk about this now.
Yeah.
So originally, and I in preparation for this, so not only do I have Jason Reitman's introduction from the screening in London, but I also listened to the DGA podcast where he's interviewed by Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
And I re-listened to that in preparation for this, so I can give you, if you can't be bothered listening to the podcast, well, I'm just going to be reenacting it here for you. So he speaks to Del Toro, and I didn't know that Benny Safdie was actually cast as Kaufman.
Yeah.
I thought it was just they wanted him.
Yeah.
But he was actually cast and had to drop out when his film with The Rock got greenlit. And Reitman says that Benny Safdie used to do Kaufman-esque stand-up.
Yeah, you can see that.
I didn't know they did stand-up. I thought they were pure film guys. But
Doing stand-up doesn't mean being a stand-up comedian, though, doesn't it?
if you're in New York, you can...
we could just go to clubs and do material if you wanted.
Yeah. And so I think Benny Safdie would have been a lot better.
Miles better. I mean, a lot of my notes and thoughts, apart from opinions on the film, rather than plot problems and all that, are casting. Good and bad.
Yeah.
This film does have the best of all worlds and the worst of all worlds.
Yeah.
But Braun as Kaufman is... It's the worst one for me.
Really?
One of the worst. I mean,
I would struggle, yeah.
And I am a huge Andy Kaufman fan. I think that's quite well known.
Almost more than SNL.
Almost. Kaufman's one of my biggest influences ever. And I'm sure I've said this before to you and on the podcast. I like Jim in Man on the Moon. It's not a great impression at times, but it captures the essence and stuff.
Yeah.
The minute Braun steps out and he's 9 foot tall, it's just... Like, before he's even opened his mouth and done the, thank you very much and all this, I know, I'm just like, oh my god, why? And then you're thinking, how tall's Lorne? Maybe he's 4'10" or something. But it looked like Lord of the Rings when he got out the taxi. It looked like Gandalf and Frodo.
Could they not have done the reverse? Could they not have, the tricks they did for Ian McKellen, do the reverse of shoot Nicholas Braun from above.
And it's a weird casting thing. And again, not even just the height, like the gangliness, the facial frame of him. He doesn't look like Andy Kaufman, unfortunately. And
he doesn't get the voice.
That's
really.
the big thing. Yeah. So when I get through casting, and I'm going to get ranty and not, for me, just in the spirit of SNL.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't want prosthetics and to look like it. And
no. Like you said, capture the spirit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can't do any of that for Kaufman.
Yeah.
I'm going to say specifically for Kaufman, for Braun, but the voice as well. It's pretty rough.
Well, the funny thing is, in between my viewings, we of course had the re-election of 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and the note I have here, I think Kaufman's first line is, "Do you like my suit?"
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, he sounds like Barron Trump. Because there was a theory for ages that Barron Trump was non-verbal, and then they leaked that thing of him as a child be like, I like my suitcase. And I was like, here we have Slovenian migrant Andy Kaufman. But so Kaufman comes into the elevator and he barely fits in, and Cooper Hoffman playing Dick Ebersol is there, and he's like, so Dick Ebersol, what's his official title?
He's a producer. So
he's just another, because I thought Lorne was the producer.
No, he's the... So this is where it gets a bit complicated. So Dick Ebersol is the original producer of SNL. He puts it together. He hires Lorne.
Yeah.
And over the years, and this is something we kind of get away through now, we have the two origin stories of SNL.
Yeah.
Who was more important?
Yeah.
Dick obviously said Dick was more important.
Yeah.
I put the show together and Lorne takes all the credit.
Yeah.
When Lorne leaves, Dick is the second producer to take over.
Yeah.
Does 4 years, does 4 good years as well.
Yeah.
Dick Ebersol is just as important as Lauren.
Yeah.
In the Star and in the SNL history.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a producer. If this is our film, he's me.
Yeah. Dick Ebersol's like the guy who deals with the studio. He deals with NBC, and he's like, he's
the one that's got the time slot.
Of the.
All the
exactly, yeah. And so he is the practical one.
Yep.
And saying to Lauren, like, why was a llama delivered?
Yep.
And Lauren's like, oh, well, like, a llama's funnier than a donkey. And I have a quote here, which is Lorne Michaels, did anyone ask Edison what a light bulb was before he harnessed electricity? And Dick Ebersol says, who are you in this metaphor? Which I think is a great encapsulation of their relationship.
Yeah, it is. And they've also got very, very strong dynamics here.
Yeah.
This is praise for both actors.
Yeah. So we should just say right now, Lorne Michaels is played by Gabriel LaBelle, who this might be his second film. I've only seen him in The Fabelmans, in which he plays a young Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought he was great in that, and I think he's great in this, and I think they've got a really good central cast with those two.
They do. They're a very strong dynamic. Again, they're both young performers, obviously, having nearly their second breakthrough films.
Yeah, they're both early 20s.
But yeah, they are so. I'm giving Hoffman a little bit more praise because he is fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
But LaBelle does great too. Like, and I think in terms of not doing an impression, not doing the Dr. Evil, Lorne Michaels, not trying to go with a little bit more.
Yeah, if you're the lead of the film, like you can do impressions if you're here for like 30 seconds, but when you need to carry the film, you do believable foremost as a person.
Absolutely.
And so
I'm gonna give them absolute mad props. I think they were both great.
Yeah, and so my note is that dialogue about Edison the light bulb. I was like, it's a little bit Sorkin-esque. And I know it's very popular to like hate on Aaron Sorkin now, and I've not seen any of his TV work, so perhaps that explains why I like him a bit more.
Yeah.
But I don't like Trial of the Chicago 7, but he's written like some of my favorite films in Social Network and Steve Jobs, and I think this film has a little bit of the Steve Jobs quality to it, where it's that heightened, it's a little bit stagey.
And I get that. I mean, I actually like the Trial of the Chicago 7. I forgot I'd seen that, but that's probably a good example that I forgot I seen it until you mentioned it as well. I was like, so I don't like his TV stuff that much, but I'm probably in the same boat as you.
Because in Steve Jobs, Michael Fassbender has a line where he's like, what is it about every product launch that like everyone in my life goes off to a bar and gets drunk and then tells me what they really think of me? And this just has a little bit of it of like that heightened Lorne Michaels' life is disintegrating around him. And like, because if we haven't set up the conceit of the film, it's set in real time and it's the 90 minutes before the first episode of SNL goes on air. And so everything's just gone to shit, and Lauren is desperately trying to pull it over the finish line of like, the actors aren't present, paperwork hasn't been done. I guess we'll get into that.
Dick Ebersol's trying to get across the finish line.
My next note, Nazi Dr. Dolittle. So is that an idea that ever comes to fruition in SNL?
You get a lot of Nazi. There's a lot of Nazis stuff in the early years.
They're like, Nazi Dr. Dolittle, we have ways of making you talk. Is the throwaway line.
I can't remember it. It's a Michael O'Donoghue joke, isn't it? In the film?
No, I don't think so. I think this is before we get O'Donoghue. I think this is just a random throwaway. I think a woman says it as they're going through the elevator. Because maybe we should say now the space of this. One of the strongest things about the film is the use of space, because they kind of shot this a bit like a play. Like, it's very Birdman-y. And in the DJ podcast, Jason Reitman says that he originally wanted to do this as one take.
Yeah, and I thought that throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
Before you even go further, you obviously, and I don't think the film lands it, but having that Birdman one take style with an uncut gems, tension of movement, chaos, everything falling apart around you. I think the elements, I could see it there. I don't think it was executed right, but I could see it.
I think he made the right call, because Reitman said that, like, basically everyone told him, no, you were crazy, don't do this as one take. And Del Toro prods him a little bit, and he reveals that it was Ivan Reitman who, like, actually persuaded him not to do it, saying that like doing it as one take, you are robbing yourself of like the tools of directing. You can't edit, you can't do that.
In some ways, I don't think doing one literal take is the answer, but long takes. I wouldn't care. I'm not one of those
They
people.
did that, like the first, apparently there's no cuts in the first 5 minutes or something.
Oh, fair. Finn Wolfhard doesn't need no cuts, does he?
Yeah, exactly. Which you hate it well, because it doesn't look showy in the way like, what's his Bond film, Spectre, where they do that?
Yeah.
Or sometimes you do it and you're just very aware that it's a oneer.
Yeah.
But at no point, I thought this was really good, where it has the energy of being live in real time, but you're never in your head thinking technically how are they doing this. But Reitman said even when he decided not to write this in terms not to make it one take, he said that he still had that approach of when he was writing it, he wrote it in terms of geography of where's what going on,
yes.
where is everyone at any given moment, and he tried to have like sort of like 4 or 5 conflicts in every room that Lord Michael's going
and
to.
I do see that. I almost agree with you. I don't feel the execution was great, but
Fair enough.
I do get what you say. I do get what you say.
Next note. So I looked up his name because I wanted to shout him out. So Nicholas Podani, who plays Billy Crystal.
My God. Before you even say it, because I might say something totally different here, okay?
Yeah.
Billy Crystal in this is fan-fucking-tastic,
Yeah.
right? The minute you see him as well, he looks like a young
Do you
Bill.
hear him before you see him?
He's saying jokes, I believe. Is he not? I don't know. I just watched the film. He's either talking to Lauren or he's doing these little sketches on the couches, when he's playing
Yeah,
about.
because him and who's the...
It's either Gilda or Lorraine Newman, one of the actresses, and he's... I don't know, it's the other comedian.
Yeah, it's exactly.
It's what's her name?
Like, because they're the two outsiders.
And I actually asked you before this, I was like, is Billy Crystal in the film?
Yeah.
Because it's one of the most famous
Yeah.
stories of the first episode is Billy getting bumped, and then he returns to host in season 9, becomes a cast member in season 10, then becomes Billy Crystal.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the look of him, which is something that, again, this is really panicky, but his hairline, because you think everyone's used to Harry Met Sally Billy Crystal, not young with a full head of hair Billy Crystal.
Yeah.
His mannerisms were great. I wanted to applaud him. Now, that was he was one of my favourites of all the castings.
Same. The thing that he nails is the voice.
Which is important. It's the most important part.
Exactly, because for so many people who know Billy Crystal as Mike Wazowski, he has like such an iconic voice, and that's key. You can't imagine, as much as we've said, like Kaufman, Carey capturing the spirit of Kaufman, with someone like Billy Crystal, you can't do Billy Crystal if you can't do the voice.
Yeah, and as
there's
something as well, right? Because we've spoke about again the cultural coast differences. Watching it with Sophie, there's a lot of who's that, who's this, who's that. When you can tell from Billy Crystal from a mile away, that's so good. That's good. Because they're not going to expect them to know. And
because he's not a big character, you can't spend time establishing this is William Crystal who's going to go off, and
you just
he's just like a little like. It's colouring in between the lines of like, oh, this is what a rich world SNL is if Billy Crystal gets
you can't do it in 2 minutes, get out. Yeah.
And the other thing, so Lauren's looking at the running order with all the cards on the board, trying to find space for things, and he's like, filmed by Albert Brooks. I never knew that. I knew Albert Brooks was involved in...
Does his the films in SNL?
I had no idea that was what he did in SNL.
So, yeah. Right, so as well, one thing I decided to do after watching this film was watch the first episode of SNL immediately after.
Yeah.
And you do get to see Albert Brooks's film.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm used to Albert Brooks's, and Albert Brooks has obviously gone on to be hugely successful in his own right.
Yeah.
His SNL stuff sucks. He writes a lot. I don't think there's the writers, Davis and Franken, or anyone's going out. It's just him going out to make his films.
Yeah.
And they aren't funny. So it's one of those... product of its time, and you're like, oh yes, Brooks did get
training wheels, we all need room to fail.
He had a horrible time on SNL. He didn't ever really work in 30 Rock. It's all just outsourced. Go make some films, I'll put them on.
Yeah.
Obviously paves the way for your digital shorts and everything that comes, but
Yeah, interesting. Okay, my next note, Belushi hasn't signed his contract. So that...
Talk about Belushi.
Yeah, so this is all within the first 5-10 minutes of the film. And I'm like, they do a really good job of just establishing the sources of conflict going on here. Because within the first 5 minutes, you learn that one of the cast members hasn't signed their contract. And then they also establish the network censor who's going through with, what's her pen?
Red pen,
Is it
the red pen.
Yeah. And so do you want to talk about Belushi here?
Well, let's get. I've done my reveal for Billy and Kaufman. You go first. You go with your Belushi thoughts.
I don't really know Belushi, to be honest. I know him from like Animal House, and I know him from like... I'm not like a big Belushi fan. I thought he was like...
He doesn't have the big body of work though. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You know, you've got Animal House 1941. If you
not seen that. Yeah,
Blues
the
Brothers.
Spielberg.
Yeah.
I have actually seen 1941.
Yeah, he's good
left
in
no
that.
memories.
He is good in it. Belushi on SNL though is different than obviously he doesn't have the career afterwards.
Yeah.
He dies, but he's great. I love Belushi. He's not ever one of my favorite cast members, but he's something. You know, he's something different. Energy, delivery, mannerisms, physicality, you name it. So he's the hardest one to cast.
Yeah, so if you're putting me on the spot, my thing was like he's fine. He looks enough like it that I wouldn't go either way.
Okay.
He's not. I wouldn't say he's bad.
I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's bad. It's just I don't think he looks like Belushi with a fucking fake pube beard and the wig and things. Some of it looks a bit. If I'm going to be honest, he looks like an SNL sketch about John Belushi.
Well, that's the interesting thing that Reitman says on the podcast is he spoke about how he was like, we didn't want the cast to be doing impressions. Like, you're not Dan Aykroyd doing this sketch. No. You're Canadian Dan Aykroyd who still has a snowplow business in Toronto and knows he'll be okay and is sleeping with everyone in the film. And like, for the best part, the best performances feel like actual people beyond the Billy Crystal thing. Yeah. And Belushi,
he was just the most.
He's the most.
He is the most.
You never really feel like you're watching
John Belushi.
And that's maybe like a failure of the writing, but you're like, it's very external of like he's acting this way because this is how Belushi needs to act, but you don't feel as if you're getting to know him.
And I don't think there's an easy solution. You could maybe work around him not being there and keep absence, but Belushi's hard. It's just one of those. There's certain people. Like Chris Farley would be
Who
the same.
Who would you cast as Belushi?
I don't know. I actually
Paul Waterhauser is who I would cast.
Jim Belushi.
Richard Jewell. Oh God, BH.
But I'm not having a go at the actor because he does try. He actually really does try. I just think there's a miscast and miswriting. Belushi's probably the one that just made me squirm a little bit the most.
Yeah. Fair enough. My next note, Aykroyd gets autistic about guns.
Yep. Aykroyd's very autistic about guns.
Because they do the home robbery, home burglary sketch, and then Aykroyd's immediately talking to the armorer, being like, this is the Magnum 45. And by the way, can you make sure there's a live round in the chamber in the circus?
Well, I will say that, right? So saying about Belushi, I loved Aykroyd's. I'm the polar opposite of Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Because sounds, looks, acts great. Yeah. Rips great. Everything. I was like, that's one of the best like cast members was Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Gets all these mannerisms, how he acts, how he, the womanizing thing is a little confusing because I know the stories.
Yeah.
But Sophie was asking, who's Rosie with? Who's Rosie again? Is she not married to Lauren? Why is Dan? Does Lorraine fancy Dan? I was like, it's very Fleetwood Mac rumors. And I don't think the film does great on explaining everything other than he's just hitting on people. But I think his bits for the gun's great. I love Aykroyd, and I think Aykroyd's one of the shining parts of the cast.
Another funny thing from the Reitman podcast is he said that he spoke to everyone and they all gave him like conflicting stories.
Yeah.
And
then, you read, as I have done all the stories of Aykroyd, you do get very conflicting stories as well.
Yeah.
He is the second best cast member for me, though. Actual main Magnificent Seven.
Yeah. Okay, my next note, Henson. Hey, come on, man. Violence, really?
Yeah.
So we're back with Nicholas Braun because this is who he was originally cast as, is Jim Henson. And when Safdie dropped out, Reitman said that hey, SNL has people playing multi-characters. Why don't we reuse Nicholas Braun? Which I think was a big mistake, but I guess you have to keep that $30 million budget.
It's not like you've got a cast of 30 other people you could try and use. No. Let's use a 9-foot tall giant.
So how do you think about him as Henson?
I like him as Henson. I think he looks great.
Yeah.
He looks great as Henson. I knew the Henson part coming up was going to probably be where I have misgivings about the film. Because I was like, well, if they're pissing all over Jim and Dick gets a little bit of pushed under the carpet, this is a Lorne piece. This is Lorne's side of the story. Albert Brooks isn't going to get a cameo. So on one hand, the performance of Braun's great. I know the Muppets had a terrible time on SNL. I know the writers hated them. I know Michael O'Donoghue, hung them and sodomized them with things. I know they had a rough time. I don't think it's done well in the film though. I
hate how they're handled in the film. I think it's an interesting contrast to have this sort of adult, like, revolutionary, we're cool, and you're the family-friendly loser. I think it's like an interesting conflict to have.
I think it's more interested in real life. I don't think it's done well in the film.
Because it's the same joke every single time. Every time Jim Henson appears, you're like, okay, this scene is going to be exactly the same. Yeah. It's going to be Henson complaining about something they've done to the Muppets.
Fucking times.
Like, it's fine if the cast were laughing at him, but it's like the movie is also laughing.
It's fine if you do it in a 3-beat. He arrives and he's nervous because he doesn't have material.
Yeah.
Right? Oh no, the writers are bullying me. The third one, now they've hung fucking Big Bird.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
It progressively gets into a punchline instead of him just moaning more and more and more throughout the film.
Yeah, it's just the same scene 3 times. And they've sodomized Big Bird.
It's very fun as well because this was a point in the film where Sophie got quite passionate about it.
Yeah.
She was like,
she's a big Elmo fan.
Well, she was like, this, but it's the fucking Muppets. Why are they being so hard? Why is it so mean punching down? And I tried to be I've heard the stories that...
Well, Sophie, are you aware of Muppet history on Twitter?
What's happening? So I was trying to be like... relevancy, yeah. I was trying to be like, obviously some of the writers preferred to write for humans. That Gilda had no lines or Jane Curtin had no lines. Why would I give lines to Muppets rather
if we're not fitting Billy Crystal in here,
then... So I 100% get the real life dynamics and all that, right? Yeah. So, but Sophie got quite passionate and she was like, yeah, but the Muppets became the Muppets, they come Sesame Street, they've got Christmas Carol, they've got Fraggle Rock or Snaggle Rock or whatever. Like the Muppets become bigger than SNL. And I'll argue probably the same on production because SNL has to produce Eddie Murphy and Mike Myers for you to get Shrek and all this shit, all these things that have to happen from SNL. But she got very, very passionate. And the funniest part of it all was when we watched the episode after, she turned to me during the Muppet segment and went, this is fucking awful. And I was, I told you so. It's very, and then suddenly you want to hang them now, don't you? You want, because, and you could say it's because they didn't get the material from the writers. You could say, how do you write for Muppets that are... with sets and props and certain things anyway, you've kind of at the mercy of Henson.
Yeah.
It's fucking rubbish on SNL, but it is interesting and it should have been done better in the film because it's that's a cool tidbit trivia thing and it's just pissed on him. So I'm on your side. It's very mean.
Yeah.
Especially now in 2024, I didn't expect it to be so mean.
Yeah, like you can be mean, just make it interesting. And it was, I didn't like how Henson was handled. And so my next note is the score live, which Jason Reitman gave a lot of time to both in the introduction to the film and in the DGA interview, where he says he likes people to know it because he feels like it changes their relationship with the film, is that the score was written live. So at the end of each day, he said they shot from 9 until 6. And then after they were done, John Baptiste, who plays the what's his face?
Schrader?
No, the guy whose nose you were... The guy who you made the...
Billy Preston.
Yeah. So John Baptiste plays Billy Preston.
Yes, he is Billy Preston.
And after they shot, Reitman's editor would come in with a rough cut of the film, and Baptiste would score the film live with the band.
That's cool.
And everyone hung around. They would hang around to eat and just to watch this live performance of Baptiste would be, hey, can you give me an A flat? And then we just randomly pick up instruments. and the score is really good.
It is.
And then, it does contribute to this feeling like a sort of like, it gives it that Birdman theatrical energy.
Yeah. And I'm going to say the Preston performance.
Yeah.
I pointed out his nose quite quickly because he's got Nicholas Braun's length on his nose. But fucking hell, it's a very good performance. And when you're doing that jump to the real life episode 1, I'm going to say, Jason, you did fantastic. Like, obviously, the costumes that actually might be the costumes from that time. You've just got them out of storage, but the shooting of it and the lighting, the graffiti on the walls, where everyone's standing, it's almost 1 for 1. And he does such a good Billy Preston performance too. That's phenomenal. The soundtrack's great too. Yeah, that's all good. I'm not going to complain anything there.
Yeah, we should probably shout out the production here, actually, because I think it says on Wikipedia that they shot this in Georgia. So they recreated 30 Rock on a soundstage in Georgia. And there's a scene where like someone gets hit in the face with a brick. And Dick Ebersol's like, why the fuck are you using real bricks anyway? Let's get some foam, let's get some. And Lauren is like, no, this needs to have the feel of an actual New York City street. And that comes across in the film of, it's shot in Georgia, but you would never know because you feel that real brick. It feels like there's heft to it. Yeah. My next note, Chekhov's blood gun. Because they're doing the Julia Stiles sketch, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Franken and Davis, isn't it? They're what their sketch.
Is that weirdo pair of Al Franken? I forget what Trump's nickname for Al Franken actually is. Frankenstein.
Well, I can cover them now. I can quickly cover Franken and Davis, who are the 2 most prominent writers of the glory years.
Yeah.
Michael O'Donoghue becomes head writer. Jim Downey's my favourite, but they're the 2 of the best known ones. Their dynamics, they're progressive, conservative, bouncing off each other, falls apart after, but I like them in this. I thought there was a very good portrayal of both of them. It looked like Franken and Davis. The people that are normies and don't care, they're just 2 of the snobby, like 2 snarky writers. Is all they need to know. But
one of them being future senator Al Franken.
Stuart Saves His Family star Al Franken. But again, they have that silhouette look where you can tell who's who, and they do deliver everything the way I actually imagined Davis and Franken were. So they were good. I actually enjoyed them ones.
Because they're doing it's like a Julia Stiles cooking show parody, and then...
Which they do, by the way. It's a Dan Aykroyd sketch, and it's like it's exactly that. A cooking channel, he cuts his arm off, blood goes everywhere. Yeah,
so as they're setting that up, I was like, this is Chekhov's blood gun, because that's going to come back around.
It. And it does.
Next line, formality. So Lauren says, like, Dick Ebersol finds out that Belushi hasn't signed his contract, and he's like, Lauren, what the fuck are you doing? And Lauren's like, it's a formality. And Dick is like, yeah, well, they're pretty formal around here. So, which I thought was like, again, is Cooper Hoffman's delivery of it. So but just like... And then my next note is Mr. Rogers. My impression of Mr. Rogers plunging 18-inch steel sewing needles into his eyes. So this is when Dick has a room full of like execs and network people.
So Lauren, you have to get Lauren to come in and meet all the
and charm, and that's it's a really good comedic beat where Lauren is just like, opens the door, and then sees just like a sea of like
it's a very Bugs Bunny
50-year-old man slams the door.
And you know what? I'm gonna give Jason his flowers here too, because it's so good because it doesn't look real. Like there's so many people crammed into one room. Yeah. That's a wonderful beat. I will give you credit there. So he has to go in and charm them and go up and speak.
Like, this is what we've got planned for you. And like Dick warns him, doesn't he? He's like, listen, these people are like executives, very conservative, so don't do the Che Guevara. No. Like, don't tell them all the revolutionary stuff, whatever. And so Lauren is kind of like a little nervous.
Yes.
And he's like, well, here's the talent that I've got to kind of support me. And so he introduces Michael O'Donoghue.
No, Chevy comes on.
No, O'Donoghue does the...
Oh, yeah.
O'Donoghue is like... and here's my impression of Mr. Rogers plunging 18-inch steel sewing needles into his eyes.
But that's at the end. No. It's no.
No, it is O'Donoghue and then it's Chevy.
I thought Chevy takes it and then hands it. No, because Chevy says, here's our head writer, Michael O'Donoghue.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Because I said this when I was watching the film. Because so basically, Lauren goes on, does shite.
Yeah.
Chevy takes the
Chevy
mic off
saves
him.
it. Yeah,
and it saves it, and he's charming all these people.
Yeah.
He's making all these Chevy jokes.
Yeah.
Everyone loves them. And in the funniest, Cheviest kind of way, he knows the funniest thing to do is, here's our head writer, Michael O'Donoghue, who is going to fucking destroy the room. Because Chevy is also funny. Like, as much as people won't admit it now, that is a very funny thing to do, is here's the chaotic element.
Yeah.
Michael O'Donoghue comes on,
does that bit, and then Chevy takes it back over.
And we're all out.
And so this is when Chevy, and so this is where we get introduced to Willem Dafoe, who is like, is he head of the network?
He is. I can't remember the guy's name, but he is.
Del Toro asked if he was a composite.
I think he's a real person, isn't he?
Yeah, Reitman said he's a real person. He's kind of serving as a composite, but he is an actual person.
And that's it. And so I don't know the names, but I remember from the books and the stories of how close this was.
I guess we can find his name here.
But now is a good time then to get to talk about Chevy and O'Donoghue.
Yeah.
The next two. Chevy has a silhouette look.
Yeah.
You can tell Chevy from a photo. That's the guy playing Chevy. Yeah. I think he gets some of the delivery right.
David Tebbutt.
David Tebbutt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, sorry not to cut you off.
Unfortunately, there's a certain charm missing from Chevy that's very hard to capture. I think he did well. I think
we should probably deal with his introduction, I think, because that's key, isn't it?
Okay, go on.
So this is in the opening 5-minute section where you're meeting everyone. And Chevy is another Billy Crystal type thing of you almost hear him before you see him. He's introduced with a pratfall because he falls over. He's like, oh, tripped over my penis. Yep. So you think the charm's missing? I don't know.
It's something that I didn't think of at the time, right? But when I immediately followed, you're like, oh yeah, fucking hell, Chevy is a lot more. You could see in real life why Chevy probably got away with more.
Yeah.
He's a handsome lad, like he is very confident, very charismatic. He's full set of hair at this time. He's tall and slim. Like, it's maybe just a little hard to get that. I think Community Boy has always been the best. What's his name? Joel.
Joel McHale.
I think he's always been one of my favourite Chevys.
Speaking of full heads of hair.
Yeah. In terms of you can get some of the more, I don't know, the physical charisma across. It's really minor, and the guy does a good job. But Chevy's another hard one to play, and I do think he could have been cast a little bit better.
Interesting. I don't have those issues, but also I've never really I've never really liked Chevy Chase. You're right in that he has that sort of likable asshole thing to him, but I think I veer a little bit more to the asshole side where it's a begrudging. I'm like, I kind of resent that you're as good as you are.
Yeah. And I do think that is exemplified though by that first season of SNL. I do think when he is the head writer, he is doing a lot of writing and sketches. He's a funny guy, and it does suck because he's an asshole, unfortunately. Yeah. Speaking of assholes, though, Michael O'Donoghue, the actual head writer, is a well delivered. It captures the essence, right?
Yeah.
He's a bit too, I don't know, maybe he's a bit too charismatic and handsome and less weird and snivelly as the real Michael O'Donoghue was.
I saw a picture of him because they put him through
Well, we watched it because obviously the Wolverine sketch opens the real episode.
Yeah.
So I seen it go from actor to real life within minutes.
So I saw him on IMDb because he's underneath 70s hair and whatever, but when you see the actual actor, he is insanely handsome. It's Superman. I know writers don't generally look like that.
And it's obviously it's one of the big things about O'Donoghue was him wanting to be a performer. He is actually listed as a cast member in the first episode, along with George Coe, who is not in this film. Rest in peace. So, but then you see him and you go, I can understand why you get back in the writer's room. The prosthetic hair piece on the actor playing him was generous because O'Donoghue was, he's a weird looking guy. That's other than that, the actor does fine. Having him slightly more charismatic might help. Likable, because O'Donoghue says some vicious stuff, and
my note further down is O'Donoghue's kind of an epic edgelord in this.
Yes,
and
he was.
The issue is that O'Donoghue was probably key to what the epic edgelord identity would become forming. It's like he's the OG epic edgelord.
Well, actually, the OG epic edgelord is the host, George Carlin, who Michael O'Donoghue has a great line about in the film. So, is that Diet Lenny Bruce or something about Lenny Bruce?
So let's tackle here, because O'Donoghue has a good line which he says, television is a lava lamp with better audio.
That's a great line, isn't it?
And then he's speaking to the censor, who's like, you think that's funny? You think this is funny? And he's like, well, how do you feel about infanticide? And she's like, I don't like it. And he's like, okay, well, I've got a story for you about a real powerful guy who impregnates a woman through rape, and she births this child who is then mutilated and hung up on a cross. Yeah. Now, how do you feel about that story? Yeah. And I was like, oh, like the way it's played out, like now obviously it's very epic Reddit atheist, but in the film, it's a good takedown of this woman. It is.
And again, that's the what is edgelord now? Well, O'Donoghue,
exactly.
George Carlin,
that didn't exist in the 70s.
Exactly. You are the counterculture.
It's because they are so funny that people are like, oh, methinks I will make this my personality.
Exactly,
perhaps.
Milady.
Yeah. Oh, what if George Carlin had a fedora and a samurai sword? Truly a formidable foe that would make. So when Lauren is still struggling in the room, he gets introduced to Willem Dafoe, and he says there's never been a television show by or for the generation that grew up watching television, which is interesting because now we think about that in terms of the internet, in terms of like generations now who are growing up with no idea of a world without the internet.
Yeah.
And like people whose brains are formed by TikTok and all the fear mongering there is about that. And you're right. You're like, oh yeah, there was that similar fear of Lauren's generation of like, they don't know. Yeah. They've had their brains rotted by whatever.
By the slop,
and so that does a good job of portraying the new guard, old guard thing.
Yeah.
And I think like the ages of the performers do a good job of that as well. Of like Cooper Hoffman and Gabriel Labelle are like early 20s. And it, like younger than like the actual people were. But I think in the way that like 1917 does a really good job of showing how like, oh, these were actual children fighting in World War One. I think they do a good job with that, because there's a funny thing on the DGA podcast where Jason Reitman was like, my two ambitions when I was younger were to direct movies and to write for SNL. And after Juno came out, my agent got in touch with Lorne Michaels and was like, hey, can Jason write on SNL? And Lorne wrote back and said, yes, the young man can go to space camp. And Jason's like, so I was just a kid. And I was like, I'm going to look up how old he was when Juno came out. And he was 30.
Yeah.
And so it's funny how he's like, oh, I was a kid. I was like, you were the age that Lorne Michaels was when he... Because Gabriel Bell is like 10 years younger than he's playing.
Yeah, but that's a good point. They're not all kids though. The new kids on the block kind of mentality. They're all from Second City. They're all, you know...
Many of them had careers in as well. They're live things.
At least for the 5 years worth experience. It could be a reason that Jason cut George Cole though. Because, for the listeners, there was another original cast member for the first 6 episodes, I think it is, called George Coe, more famously as the voice of the butler on Archer. And he was hired as the token old guy to play the straight man in sketches. And he's a cast member. He was a proper cast member. But he doesn't last very long because he's not a comedian. Yeah. And he had which I'll get into a little bit of a why am I here?
Yeah.
What am I here for? I'm an old stage actor.
Yeah.
So they've cut him completely from the movie. There's no reference to the old original George Coe, this old cast member shuffling about, who I think he was in his 50s or something at the time. So that could be the attempt to try and show it as this young, new kids, old generation, new generation kind of thing. Whereas Lorne, you know, I think he did write or did something for like I Love Lucy or something back in the days, in 6 days. He is an old TV fan too. So as much as he's saying that this is going to be the revolution, I don't know if he always believes. He basically puts on vaudeville. You know?
Yeah. They do a good job of that with like the crew and like the stagehands.
Yeah.
Of like their older guys being like, you're going to be gone by next week. And there's a line on IMDb about how the guy who gets told, like, oh, you're going to be gone by next week is the art director, who's the only person who's worked on every season of SNL.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you now. Who's the weird-looking guy on piano?
Oh, it's Schrader, isn't it?
Schaefer.
Schaefer, sorry. Paul Schaefer.
Yeah.
Blues Brothers. He's not Letterman's. He's, was he Carson's? Letterman's? He's a talk show. He was their sidekick guy.
Yeah.
I think it's Letterman. I'm going to go with Letterman. He was on one of them. He is the musical director. he is probably most famous for the movie Blues Brothers, because he does all the music on that and is in the film as well, and the sequel for those listening. He looks great.
Well, he looks terrible, because this is why I was like, who is that weird looking guy? Because I was like, he must be someone, because they have created such a weird look for him of like, he's bald, but he has ginger hair.
Because he's known for being really bald, like full bald.
Well, now he's committed to it.
But he commits to it very early. But in the first couple of years, he's got the horrible weird like rat tail thing behind him as well.
Like sort of like a ginger monk.
When I first seen him, I thought he was James Austin Johnson.
Oh, okay,
And I was like, oh, is that the only going to be an SNL meta kind of thing? It's not him, but for a second I thought it was him. Just with the nose and the makeup, I thought that'd be a very good job for you.
Well, we have karma, because I just written down, who is this repellent looking, horrendously ugly guy? And then I discovered it was Paul Rust, who is the actor from Netflix's Love Show. I would periodically get texts, be like, oh, Jericho, you look just like that guy from the Netflix show. Okay.
Sorry, James Austin Johnson. I'm casting Jericho instead.
My next note, Polaroid, because Dick Abersole is desperately trying to cram some product placement into the show. Because he's like...
Which is right, again, this is one of those... I'm maybe on Team Dick a little bit more than Team Lauren.
Yeah.
But Dick Abersole did try and do stupid networking, advertising things to, what do you think Michael O'Donoghue's going to fucking do when you pull out a Polaroid? This scene, though, when he's trying to sell the camera, this was my Chekhov's gun. Yeah. This was, I never thought the blood. I'd seen the camera. I was like, bet you he's going to use that at the end. He's going to get the staff photo. I bet you will. Well, so I've seen that fucking photo so many times.
The funny thing was that I'd just done the 40-hour film competition in London a couple weeks ago, and that was sponsored by Fuji, who gave you like a little Polaroid to use. And so I was basically the Dick Abersole of like, oh, hey, let's use this camera. Let's do this, whatever. And I think this is partly why I liked the film so much, is in his introduction, Jason Reitman said, like, this is like a love letter to anyone who's ever like done a show or made a film or whatever, of this captures that madcap, chaotic energy of just trying to get the thing over the line. And so that's perhaps why I was predisposed to like this even before the film began. My next note, featuring more Jericho London name dropping, another anecdote told by Jason Reitman at what would have been the UK premiere, is he was like, oh, we have like cast member in the audience, Emily Nairn, who plays Lorraine Newman. And he said that while he was in London shooting Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, or whatever, he was like, I bumped into Lucas Hedges in Soho, and I went to see him in Brokeback Mountain, which I have also seen with Jade, friend of the show. And Jason Reitman was like, and I saw this actor in Brokeback, and I was like, she's incredible. And then he spoke to her afterwards. He was like, oh, and I only discovered that she was not from the American South. She was from Liverpool. But he was like, you're so perfect. I want to cast you as Lorraine Newman. And so I think that's the one British person who's in the film.
She does fine. And I haven't actually, on the three girls for their casting, Gilda was fine. She captured the essence of Gilda.
Yeah.
At least she doesn't have much to work with.
None of the women really get.
No, Gilda, and you think Gilda would get the most because it's Gilda fucking Radner. But at least she has some bits. She was fine. Yeah. Lorraine in the middle, she was fine. She didn't get none to work with. She doesn't really look like Lorraine Newman, which, you've got none to work with. Yeah. And then Jane Curtin was probably the worst of the three. She has zero to work with. Yeah. But so one was one of the few where Sophie asked, who's that meant to be? Yeah. And she loves Jane Curtin. So I was like, well, that's a bad sign, isn't it? I'll have to put that in the notes.
And then Valerie Bromfield is the other comedian. Yes.
And then, of course, we get Rosie Schuster and we also get Anne Beats. But women don't get much time in this film.
Yeah, yeah. And so they're not going to get much time in this podcast. So moving on, we have another guy to talk about, which is Lauren has just... So Willem Dafoe is trying to poach Chevy for the Tonight Show, isn't he? Yeah. And then...
which is a real seed that was planted very early on as well.
I read that, yeah.
That's Chevy. Chevy was out before he was even in. He was ready to take off very quickly.
Well, because he charmed that group of execs, and so they're like, okay, this thing's going to crash, but we'll salvage you from the wreckage.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of season one I struggle with because it's still finding its feet. But Chevy is a standout star.
Yeah.
If I was a network, Carson's thinking of retiring or whatever. Yeah, of course you're lining up Chase.
Yeah, so Lauren gets a phone call, and at first I thought it was one of the performers messing with him or something.
Yeah.
He gets a phone call, it's like, hello, it's Johnny Carson, and good luck with your show, whatever. The network does this every so often to try and keep my rates down, whatever. And I was wondering, I was like, who is doing the voice of Johnny Carson? I was like, is this going to be... Because you don't see him. It's one of like a very small vocal cameo. And I was like, is this going to be famed actor and Carson impressionist Kevin Spacey? Are they going to have got him in for that? But moving on. So
did you find out who it was?
I did find out who it was, but like it wasn't a name I knew. I think it is one of those guys like what's his name? Or the guy who plays the Red Skull in Avengers after Hugo Weaving leaves.
Yeah, but no.
they're like those people who are like, oh, you're like an impressionist,
okay,
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, my next note is, there's a pony dragon you're riding there, kid. Aykroyd line reading, which is someone's...
It's his assistant, what's his name? Neil. Neil Levy. Is Lauren's assistant. He is the production assistant on the show.
Yeah.
He takes a smoke of
Billy Preston has given
him the purple dragon.
Yeah. And he's freaking out.
To calm him down before the show, and it obviously freaks out. It's a cool little drug scene as well when he's going through all the corridors. It gives it that claustrophobic. That's quite a realistic freak out, I will say that. But I love Dan Aykroyd.
That line reading is so good. It's so Aykroyd. It's of the kids there. Yeah. Like, it's just, it's perfect.
And even when he's getting him his coke or whatever, you need to get uppers and stuff. Pharmaceutical, like, Wafi, Dan Aykroyd's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got a gun and
narcotic savant. Dan Aykroyd.
Love him. Yeah.
Okay, this is one of my biggest criticisms of film, really, is Rosie monologue about relationship with Lauren.
Yeah.
Where...
It's awful.
Is that Aykroyd? She takes one of the male characters aside and is like, listen, I've known Lauren since we were kids. At first I thought I was the sister, and then I was like, oh, I'm the wife, and now I realise that I'm the writer, whatever. But she just gives a monologue explaining her relationship with Lauren. And I was like, this serves no function if it's not explaining to the audience.
It's one of the biggest, I've said it before at the start, the love triangle dynamics, the Fleetwood Mac rumors effect, does not come across well in this film. There's too much things that are just said as lines like, oh, we were married, or are you keeping my name when the show goes on?
That's one of the conflicts they plant immediately. Is they're like,
but they don't.
We need Rosie's surname for the credits. Is she going to go by Schuster or Michaels?
Rosie doesn't get enough. I don't think anyone.
No. I think they handle the will they, won't they, what's their dynamic fine. I think apart from this monologue where she spells it out,
I don't like it. I think it's too much confusing, and then you're. I'm either you go all in on Rosie and properly write for her and make her a real character.
Well, I'm never going to say no to more Rachel Sennett. I think they could have given her more, but like it's so subjective and from Lauren's POV.
And it's Lauren's story here,
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, he can't really give her more without it.
And then he gets less.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be asking, what's Lauren doing?
Okay, so my next note is about what do they actually call him? Dan Aykroyd, male gigolo. What's his what's the name of the sketch?
I can't remember.
But they're like, Dan has to do like a workplace harassment sketch.
It's one of the most famous ones. Iconic SNL sketch where Dan Aykroyd getting...
Well, they're female construction workers, and Dan Aykroyd comes out as like wearing like a tank top and short shorts, and he's really self-conscious and reluctant. He's in like a dressing gown. He's like, oh, I'll take it off for the live. I'll just wear this. And I'm like, no, come on. And then he takes it off. And my note was, I was like, when I did my fetish-themed Shakespeare in Canada, measure for measure, I was like, my costume was infinitely more revealing. My shorts were a lot shorter than Dan's. And then it says, for the construction worker sketch, the shorts, which are supposed to be unusually short, were actually a normal length throughout the 70s and 80s. He looks like he's just walked off the set of Can't Stop the Music, to be honest with you.
I think it's less to do with the outfit and Aykroyd's insecurities.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's well known that Aykroyd and Belushi were very insecure about their bodies.
Because he
don't think
tries to be like, can't Chevy play the male gigolo?
The thing is, Chevy's going to be a dickhead as well.
Yeah.
The minute you come out in that, Chevy's just going to nails into you.
Well, they do that well because they're trying to talk Belushi into shaving, aren't they?
Yeah.
And Chevy's like, he doesn't want people to find out he doesn't have a jaw under there. He just has 12 pounds of neck flesh or whatever.
I love that because then when Belushi goes for him, he's like, what did I do?
Okay, there are 2 effect shots in the film. Do you know what they are?
No, I don't. What are they?
Okay, so the first one is changing the clocks. Because it says on IMDb, due to feedback from eagle-eyed test audiences, CGI was used to correct the time displayed on the clocks in the background of several scenes.
Yeah.
And
when your whole fucking film's about time and going on, you need to...
Well, Reitman says this on the DGA podcast, and I'm like, this is director bullshitting. There's a bit of the Brendan Rodgers, thank you for bringing joy to the city, or whatever Brendan Rodgers claimed the Rangers fan told him in the Clyde Tunnel. Very niche reference there. No one. I've done it again. Jason Reitman says that he was like, an audience member saw that it was 10:53 on the clock and it was actually meant to be 10:51. And I was like, no one is picking up on 2 minutes.
I meant it was 2 p.m. or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
usual production things. It's gone from 3 to 4 to back to 1. So that is one. The other effect shot, Milton Berle's penis.
Yeah, 30 million well spent, isn't it?
Yeah, because that was another piece of the IMDb trivia is that it was a prosthetic. They've done the Dirk Diggler, and prosthetic falls out of J.K. Simmons' trousers at one point, out of his trouser leg, and everyone laughed as this gigantic 12-inch cock falls down his trousers. But Reitman said that the other effect shot was someone had to change it to match J.K. Simmons' skin tone. And I was like, what? I was like, you don't see that much of it. You get a hint.
Yeah. You can see it's off screen,
Exactly. And I was like, and whose penis matches their skin tone anyway? I was like, it's not like getting exposed to sun. My hero, Russell Brand, had like a comedy bit about penises compared to Dulux color charts and matching people's complexions. But yeah, I was like, I find it difficult to believe that the ILM guy who had to key this, who was like matching a swathe of J.K. Simmons' face, was trying to be like, no, a little bit more pink in there, a little bit of red. We could have got this under budget.
Easily got this under budget.
I also like
the
idea of the eagle-eyed audience member, that being another test thing of like, Mr. Reitman, question for you. Why was Milton Berle's penis 3 shades lighter than his regular complexion? But do you want to talk about Milton Berle here?
I don't. The performance or his relevancy to the film is probably 2 different things as well.
So he comes in as...
He's a guest of Defoe's.
Yeah, he's a guest of Defoe's.
It's Milton Berle for our 98-year-old audience. Those under 90 that don't know who he is, was a famous comedian, TV comedian. Does host SNL as well. I think season 3 or 4 comes back to awful.
Well, that was a trivia which it said on IMDb that Lauren got that pulled from reruns. It's like notorious at the point, the worst episode of SNL.
It's not, for the record. It is not. And he's not the worst host either. But he is fucking awful. And the reason it's so bad is he's obviously shoving in the 50s style, outdated, I Love Lucy kind of humor that's Honeymooners style, Sid Caesar and all this. It's not. And then you've got Michael O'Donoghue and Jim Downey and all these talented people that doesn't mesh. It's too different. But he's an arsehole. He's a notorious arsehole.
They do a really good job showing that in
very
this.
Very efficiently.
He comes in and he's just a bit of a dick. And then they poach his lighting tech or something, don't they? And you go and you see his show.
Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Very efficient storytelling. And you get 30 seconds where you're like, I know this guy's deal. And then they come back. And then there is another scene, the penis scene.
Well, that's it. It's because Milton Berle's hitting on Chevy Chase's girlfriend.
Yeah, Chevy's looking for his girlfriend.
Who is in the first episode of SNL. Well. It was I can't remember her name.
They've established that Chevy's like wandering, looking for her for like a good little bit of time. And then he sees her talking to Milton Berle. And he goes up and is like, hey, why are you talking to him, whatever. And yeah, they have like a little bit of a like, you know, honey, this man used to be an institution, now he should be in one. And he's like, who the fuck are you? Like, I don't have an idea who you are. And it's like, oh, it's probably Alzheimer's talking.
Which so the exchange of it, and then Milton does have a comeback that I forget. And
if I wanted your comeback, I would have scraped off your mom's teeth.
And that makes the girl laugh.
Yeah, and Chevy, this is actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie because of how much it humanizes Chevy Chase. Because he's genuinely rattled when he sees her talking to him. And then we see the Chevy facade kind of like, whoa, hang on, wait, why is this guy? Why is this all?
And I think one of the cool things is that it's a double whammy of you see the insecurities of another male speaking to her, right? And then he's probably even more insecure when she laughs at him.
She laughs,
yeah. That's the worst part. That's the biggest.
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah.
I don't think he's funny. Like,
and then the guy pulls his dick out.
The laughter stops.
Yeah. And so I really liked it. And Del Toro said like an interesting thing in the podcast about like, he kind of mentioned it like, he's like, we're not seeing the people as we know them now, but he's like, we're sort of seeing origins. And he's like, Del Toro had like a really good line about, he's like, you're seeing Chevy Chase develop the chip on his shoulder that would define him for his entire career, basically.
Until he becomes Milton.
The fear of being cucked by Milton Berle is like, it's like a really nice,
it's well done. It's very well done.
Yeah.
The Milton Berle stuff and the relevancy of this film, parts of it slows it down.
I like it. I think you need him for the old guard.
I do like it.
I think it's a necessary conflict.
That's fair.
Okay, conversation on the staircase. And this is where Cooper Hoffman like really like
this is when
he earns his money, I guess. In that like Lorne is like, Cooper's like, listen, why don't we just like play the rehearsal? Yeah. We'll play the tape.
Try again next week.
And Lorne is like, well, because there isn't one. Yeah. And Cooper is like, what? What do you mean? He's like, I didn't record. And it's really good because, like, I don't know, like, speaking about our dynamic, I guess, of like having been, because Lorne Michaels is like, he's like, listen, you don't know the shit I have to deal with, whatever. And I was like, Cooper's like, hang on. You don't even get half the shit because I am the wall that stops it from getting to you. Like someone really like, I've been holding the world above you on my shoulders and you're complaining about the drops that come down. And Cooper Hoffman is like so good in that scene.
It's a fantastic scene. It's probably the best acted scene in the movie.
Yeah.
From both of them. And he's right. Me and Sophie said it when Sophie turned to me and she's like, I agree with Dick.
100%. Yeah,
I'm on his side here. And it's weird because obviously when Lauren comes back in season 11 and he's treated as the god of comedy, so he doesn't probably have to deal with nearly as much as he did in the early years.
100%.
So he gets away with it.
It's been doing the rounds on Twitter because I know people were speaking about it like Cooper Hoffman being like very Philip Seymour Hoffman in like he's doing the hands on hip. No.
The hair as well.
Exactly. And vocally in like that line where he's like,
it is actually quite. There's bits of it. There's that you can see his dad.
It's interesting because like I don't like Philip Seymour Hoffman's like one of my favorite actors, and I don't. It's not like I enjoy Cooper Hoffman because he reminds me of him. I think Cooper is like a great actor in his own right.
I can only base it off this and Licorice Pizza, really, for me.
Same. That's all he's done.
And in Licorice, I didn't think about his dad at all.
No.
And I didn't think about his dad until that scene.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only bit where he has one line where you're like, oh yeah, I can hear it. Like in isolation, I didn't think it when I first watched it, but hearing people clip it, you're like, yeah, it's very, very Phil. And then at the end, when Lauren's just like meekly come back at him with like, you're trying to put product placement in my thing or whatever, and then he just has that line, he's like, also Polaroid is cool. And I was like, people are taking Polaroids all the time now, so Dick Ebersol, man ahead of his time. Okay, and then we have the ice skating scene, which reminds me a little bit of Molly's Game, another Sorkin film, which I like quite a bit, is Belushi. So Belushi is stormed off because they've got Belushi to sign the contract, and then Dick Ebersol gives them the like, hey, Polaroid, whatever, and he flips out. He throws the Polaroid across the set. And then Belushi is ice skating outside 30 Rock, dressed as a bee. And
a damn bee outfit.
And they go out and talk to him. And then they come back in, and this is when the film is kind of reaching its crescendo.
So before we go to the end, there's the one last cast member I haven't spoken about.
Yeah.
The one that was my actual favourite.
Yeah.
Who I had to look up because I got it wrong. It was Garrett Morris.
Okay.
It was played by, you got the name
Lamorne
there? Lamorne Morris,
yeah.
right. Seen the name in the credits and thought that was his son. Just because his name, and he's so good.
All
He's
black
so
men have to be
fucking-
related,
but he's
Kyle.
so-
What are you, like a Star Wars fan or something?
I genuinely, there's moments where I was like, he looks and acts and sounds so much like Garrett. Garrett's got too much in the film. It's crazy that Garrett gets all this time and Gilda gets nothing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I was like, knowing the racial politics of the 70s, I was like, this man...
you can put him in a little bit, like you can put in, what am I doing here? I'm a showman, I'm a singer, I'm not meant to.
Well, he's a playwright.
He's a
what he
playwright,
says. Like, he's a playwright. I went to Juilliard, and
But I think that was
expecting
a
it to
Michael
be.
O'Donoghue quote in real life. But I haven't seen any of your stuff. Something like that. You put him down. But yeah, he gets a lot. But holy shit, that's a great performance. Both in terms of like look, personation, voice, singing. Like holy shit, like. Yeah, for moments I thought that was Garrett Morris.
Interesting. 'Cause
Fantastic.
I've seen him in like other stuff, and so I was like, "Oh, here's Lamorne Morris, who's good," but I was like, he's just kind of doing his usual thing. And
That's what Garrett does. Garrett isn't good. Like, no offense, I like the guy, but he's not.
Yeah.
He isn't a comedian. So you take away some of the racial profiling, which definitely happened, and he was a token black man. I totally get that. But even in his moments, he's not.
Yeah,
You can see that when he's talking to Billy Preston in the film, and they're all cool and laughing, and he's a bit square.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah, I really liked it.
That was another thing that Reitman brought up on the podcast, I think, was he discouraged the cast from speaking to the real people. He was like, no, listen, like, don't get in your head about that. You're playing characters, just whatever. And he said that he was trying to put it in their real world terms for them. So he's like, I was talking to Lamorne Morris about like, so what was it like being the only black cast member on New Girl, helping him to get it? And I was like, well, I was a big fan of New Girl season 1. I was like, he actually replaced. Yeah. I was like, yeah.
Speaking of SNL,
I was like, I guess initially he was.
what Wayne's was it? Damon Jr. maybe.
Not Marlon. It was I think it was maybe Damon
Jr. though.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties. That's the only season I've seen.
Well, yeah, I watched that when it first came out in Canada because I was like,
Damon Wayans Jr.
Damon Wayans Jr. Okay, great. Because it was Damon, and then it was Lamorne, and then they brought Damon back. By which point I checked out. Anyway, for fans of New Girl cast,
It's all links together, doesn't it?
But so things are reaching to their head because Garrett has just done his performance of Kill All the Whiteys I See, and Willem Dafoe is killing whiteys. No, this isn't happening. And then like Lauren has to like earn a salt here of he gets up and he's like, no, this is like, you don't understand. This is something new. It's revolutionary. It's moving to New York. Yeah. It's a lockup with Richard Pryor. It's almost getting hit by a cab and yelling, I'm walking here. It's an Armenian man singing Mighty Mouse. Because when tensions are high and this is make or break, this is when Andy Kaufman needle drop. And then, do you want to?
No, I don't want to fucking talk about it. No,
okay. Okay.
You know what? Like, it's still funny because it's a funny routine. So you still get a little chuckle out of it, but yeah, I hate it, man. I can't.
It was just like, okay, well, we need to throw the Kaufman heads a bone.
We need to give
because I'm like, that's not going to be what sways. What sways Willem Dafoe's like, okay, yeah, I get this. So Kaufman does Mighty Mouse, and then they go into. They do Chevy doing Weekend Update, don't they?
Yeah, so like, because Lauren has a go doing it at first.
Yeah, so they've done it earlier on.
Yeah, and Lauren, and you will see this if you ever watched the early seasons. Lauren's terrible on camera.
Yeah, very
Woody Allen head and lights. Like,
terrible.
What? Terrible.
One of the greatest screen presences of all time.
A Woody Allen performance. So. And obviously Chevy becomes the first. So I like that this show Lauren can't do it well. He can't deliver. He isn't as charismatic. He isn't a performer.
Yeah.
When did they get? When does he go get Alan's Veeble? When's that? When does he go to the bar?
Oh, this is after the ice skating that's happened.
Okay, so that was a weird bit for me.
It was very odd. Yeah. Like, I like it in isolation. It's just in its placement in the film, it's a momentum killer.
And I'm not saying cut Alan Zwiebel because he's a very important writer, but and it's a fun story with him being a one joke, kids in the hall kind of guy.
So for listeners, after he's gone to the ice rink to try and get, and this is why I must be getting the chronology of this wrong because it makes zero fucking sense. After he's got Belushi to sign the contract, when he has like 10 minutes before his show is on air, he is.
It's one of the weirdest times. It's one of the weird things about the problem with the film is if you've got 30 minutes, I think it is like 31 minutes before a show.
Yeah,
you don't have time to go across New York to go to a bar to go see a stand-up to go hire a comedian
because he's just. So we've missed out on this. Lauren kind of has a breakdown, I think, doesn't he? He
walks out. Yeah.
Is it Cooper and the Polaroid that provokes it? Something Belushi storming out, or something becomes Kaufman's like. And not Kaufman. Something becomes Lauren's like, I can't do this. He goes off, and I think Billy Crystal's haggling over like screen time, and Lauren just pulls down all the notes off the board and is like, fuck it, I don't know what I'm doing, and walks out. Which again is kind of funny. Like, I don't know. I just like that where I'm like, oh yeah, I've been in that situation where like Dick Ebersol is like, this is what breaks you. I've been dealing with 100 times this for months, and then one final, and you're just storming out. But Lauren storms out, and it works for like he's kind of given up, and he's just at the bar. And you're like,
yeah, I stormed out and went to Rockefeller Plaza and seen Belushi skating or something. I would have, but when you've got 30 minutes, he rocks out. He speeds across town somehow.
Yeah,
or there's a bar right across from 30 Rock.
It is. It's just like he goes to the he goes to the ice rink and then he goes to the bar. And it's like, yeah, I can totally get how you would walk out and be like, fuck this, and just go to a bar. But I don't get what pulls him back to like his turnaround. Like, yeah,
so he goes to see Brad Garrett is the comedian from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Interesting.
That's the brother from Everybody Loves Raymond. As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, oh, it's Brad Garrett.
Yeah. So he sees another Milton Berle type, who is like an old-fashioned vaudeville gag comic.
But he's delivering good jokes. And they're hitting flat, and his delivery's terrible. I think that's what Lauren sees. That's why he goes to approach this guy that's writing jokes. So what are you doing? Every time I get a laugh, I get $3 or something like that. $7.
I don't think it was that much. It wasn't like a quarter.
No,
or something. It's $1. Yeah.
I think it's $3 for a laugh, but he only gets paid like 50 cents or whatever because the comedian
guy haggles.
He changed. I did the punchline. So you only get that.
Yeah.
And he's just writing joke after joke after joke, and. Yeah, Lauren's just like, you want a job? Come with me.
Yeah, Lauren's like, this is it. This is what the show was missing.
Yeah. They're all going to fall apart until Alan Zwiebel came and frantically wrote jokes.
And so they go back and they have Mighty Mouse, which everyone loves, and then they have a Weekend Update with Chevy, which he crushes. He's reading jokes by Weibel, isn't he, there?
Well, yeah, the thing is, after watching the first episode as well, he's worse in the first episode. He actually stumbles over a lot of the jokes because you can tell he's just been handed the papers for the first time.
Well, yeah, they do that in the film. They make him, he's intentionally like very stumbly, but that's a genuine,
in the real life.
They don't want to portray him.
He stutters a little bit, he drops it. You can tell it's not part of the act because he's just been thrown out there.
Yeah.
You can probably see in real life that rehearsal didn't maybe happen.
Yeah.
Lauren tried it doesn't work. Now you're doing it, Chen.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then that's what convinces him. So like they're like, okay, let's get ready to go. And in the background is they have a rerun of Carson, and they're counting down like from 10. Are we gonna do the rerun of Carson? And then Willem Dafoe leans forward. Oh, wait, Adam, we're getting premature here. Another thing that I liked from the DJ podcast is that Reitman said he tried to structure this like an episode of SNL.
Yeah.
And so he's like, we get a Weekend Update halfway through the failed Lauren rehearsal. We get the musical performance. Mm-hmm. And he's like, we just have all these things where I tried to structure the film like an episode. I was like, oh, that's a little cool Easter egg.
You can tell. You can definitely tell.
So Carlin, the star of Jersey Girl, is due to host, and he's like sitting in his dressing room speechless, and Lauren's like, oh no, what's wrong? And they get Dan Aykroyd, cocaine wrangler, and who's like giving a massage. You got lockjaw there. You've either taken too much cocaine or not enough cocaine.
Again, pharmaceutical guru, all up for Aykroyd.
And then we get your Polaroid Chekhov's gun moment, where Cooper takes the picture. So Defoe's given them the green light for like, okay, you can get ready. And they're doing the opening sketch, and they're waiting for Belushi to come in. And I noticed this a lot in my viewing in the cinema. I didn't pay as much attention to it here, but I really like the cinematography first time round. So this was filmed on 16mm, which Reitman said was like key to like film has like a sort of like, and like I don't know, having acted on 16mm, there is like, it does add an energy to it of you're like, I can fuck up here, but really I can't fuck up because there's like a material cost to like digital whatever infinite takes. But like there is something about acting on film, so that was cool. And the cinematography, there's almost like in sections, there's almost like a film noir type. Like when he's on the phone to Carson in his office, and then at the end, when Lorne Michaels is waiting for Belushi to come in, is he going to turn up, isn't he? And he's hiding behind like a jib or a crane or something, and we just get like a ray of light just through his light. I was like, this is like Doug Slocum filming Indiana Jones or something. I was like, there's no reason this had to be filmed so well, but I really, really liked that. And then Belushi bursts in. So interesting thing for you is the working title of the film was Wolverines, because that was I assume that's just like a production we don't want people to know, as opposed to like...
I actually thought the working title was like 1975 or something. Like,
when we heard about it, it was called like Saturday, like 19... it wasn't... Yeah.
Okay, that's a terrible title. Wolverines would have made less than 10 million.
Exactly, 100%. Unless,
Jackman?
well, that's what I was going to say. Unless you trick a bunch of MCU fanboys into seeing it, because that's the thing I want to talk about now. So Matt Wood, who plays John Belushi, did you see that people were like fan casting him as Wolverine?
I can see it now, like in my head, but no.
Well, I'm like, did they just think that because they heard him say the line Wolverine a lot in that sketch?
Wolverine. No.
Because they're like, I don't know, people just like, they're
short and hairy and aggressive. Belushi would have made a good Wolverine.
Yeah.
I can say I don't know. I don't care enough, but
neither do I. But
I think he deserves more work.
Yeah.
I don't like him as Belushi, but I don't mind the effort. It's a weird one.
I liked everyone in this. I'd be happy to see more stuff from them.
There's no one I really disliked.
Yeah. And so back to where I was. They're counting down, and then 3, 2, Defoe leans forward. It's like, roll it.
It's dramatic.
It's such a good shot where he leans forward with his finger. And then off we go. And that's it.
The beat of Belushi taking his time is for the purposes of the movie, though.
Yeah,
he does come flying down the stairs a lot quicker in reality.
Yeah,
and then that's us. Nice little title card as well. Just as soon as it's live from New York, it's boom. Yeah, I was like, credits. Take us out.
Okay, so like we've got an inkling. Do you want to wrap up with like your actual thoughts?
My actual thoughts is I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
I still don't think I enjoyed it as much as you. I'll hear that.
Well, this is my favourite film of all time.
It's like my favourite Saturday Night Live film of all time. But there's a lot to enjoy. It was surprisingly good from Jason.
Yeah.
The competency was great.
You take that at your damn mouth. This is the guy who made Labor Day.
Yeah, I know, but not recently.
Yeah, he's been lost to Ghostbusters Trek for quite some time now.
Ringo made Sgt. Pepper's. I'm not buying his current albums,
Yeah, not watching Thomas the Tank Engine.
So there's so much good things to praise. Cooper Hoffman, LaBelle, some of the performances, absolutely fantastic. It was tight, it was fun.
Yeah.
As a fan, I liked it.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, I was never, picking away at it and thinking, and oh no, this had to change, and where's George Coe, I thought it was fine. I thought you've taken out bits and elements, you've merged some things just to help along, but very faithful, very, very faithful. I still think it's very niche. I don't know how much you would enjoy it if you've never seen anything with like old Saturday Night Live.
I haven't.
Yeah, but you know who fucking Dan Aykroyd is. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. I don't think anyone's watching this if they don't know who Dan Aykroyd is.
Okay, I'm just saying,
everyone's seen Ghostbusters.
I think it's very...
Jason Reitman isn't making movies that is reaching audiences.
But Ghostbusters has a huge fan base. I don't think a casual...
No, that's what I'm saying, is Ghostbusters fan base is so big that everyone who would potentially see Saturday Night will have seen Ghostbusters.
Okay. But I'm going to say, like, some of the some of it, I fucking love the shit. I read about this and know about this, but I'm still like, oh, there's too many people. Who's this maybe? Who's this?
Yeah.
If you didn't know, I don't know. There's probably other ways that other people could have done it. It might have made it worse, but there's some parts here. Even Neil Levy, the assistant, I don't think he's ever actually called an assistant in it.
Well, one question I have for you with Tracy Letts, who I always get confused with Top Secrets, the star of number 23. I don't remember. Tracy Letts is one of those people where I can never tell.
The cue card.
Okay, yeah.
And he's also does
like, is he like the script
stuff?
Okay,
supervisor.
Yeah, I thought because the only other older guy is like the script supervisor.
I'm sure
guy,
Herb's one of those. He's been there for fucking 40 years. I think he did a long term.
Yeah.
A Don Pardo kind of run actually.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like fucking Don Pardo. You know, like who the fuck's Don Pardo to an 18-year-old? You know,
they'll know him.
You know,
they'll be like, and musical guest The Weeknd.
But he's dead now. It's what's his name that does it now? Other cast member name slips. Anyway, but I do like it. I wouldn't recommend it to most people. I think that's the strangest thing. It's so niche.
Go watch this film.
It's so niche. Go watch.
If you've got some time, watch Ghosts Can't Do It.
Yeah, watch Birdman. Here's my New York film. But I liked it. I liked it a lot more, but I didn't love it.
Yeah.
So it's a solid film for me. It's probably the best it could be.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have done any better, so I'm not going to rag on it.
Yeah.
But I will probably forget about it. So that's about it. What about you?
I love this film. Yeah. I know, and watching this a second time really illustrated how, like, I do really like this film. I don't generally rewatch Reitman films, but, like, this is just a good time. I think it captures that energy and vibrancy of, like, making something. It's just like it's like a fun rewatch. Let's hang out with my friends Cooper Hoffman and Rosie Schuster. Of like, I think this is a good film. Yeah, I guess we'll segue into our usual things. So Razzie worthiness, not in any regard. My only real criticism is that the real misstep is that scene in which they explain Rosie and Lauren's relationship, where like, this is just for the slow people in the audience and the film doesn't need it.
Mine's is just miscasting for Kaufman really is...
Oh, true.
That's a big thing. And I'm not ever going to have a go at Nicholas because he's already cast and he's just been reused.
Yeah.
You're not going to turn down another paycheck. But it's a big thing. Pun intended, it's a very big thing to me.
So the funny thing is that Reitman said that him and Gil Keenan, who directed Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, and who's like his co-writer on this, he said that they wrote basically Jim Henson for Nicholas. Yeah. And it was just the two of them amusing themselves about people yelling insults at Nicholas Braun. And it's like, you just wanted to fantasize about writing an episode of Succession for a while. And that's why the Henson thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
Is because you wanted, wouldn't it be good if Brian Cox came in and swore at Jim Henson? And he like doesn't, the Kaufman thing doesn't work. So you are right there.
And then there's something that you could easily fix too.
Potential Razzie for Nicholas Braun?
I honestly for the Kaufman, it's pretty bad in my eyes. It's like beyond SNL sketch parody of it that you could have covered it up by having him sit down on a bench waiting, while the chaos is going around. Sit there with his record player looking around and everything's happening around him. Yeah. And I wouldn't have said a thing. Like, if he was just minimal. Yeah. But yeah, the car thing's it's so fucking weird. You don't hide his height and his performance is bad. So yeah, that's the only part.
That is a good point, yeah. Okay, so smallest change which should make the biggest difference to this film.
Kaufman. For me.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah. Mine's is similar. It's just the casting of like, I don't think there's nothing I can do that would sort of like fix this film. I don't think it needs to be fixed. But it's like, if this film doesn't have as likable as a cast, I would hate this. Yeah. Like if you get less charming performers, then I would not be a fan. But because they have got young and exciting people, that's why I'm happy just to spend time with these people.
I could pick apart. I could say things I'd want and see. It doesn't make it better though. It's not an improvement. It's a personal opinion. Yeah. However, it's not a personal opinion that Kaufman could be better and the Henson stuff could be changed a little bit. So yeah, and the Nicholas Braun stuff is definitely, in as much as I like Braun and I like his portrayal of Henson, I'm going to give that my changes there.
Yeah. Okay, well, that concludes our thoughts on Saturday Night. Stay tuned for the second half where we will cover some other business.
Ooh.
Hello and welcome back to the second half of the podcast. So this is where we cover other things going on in the Razzie universe, in the universe of the show. Basically, this is where I talk at you about my obsessions.
Yes, I've got mine about that.
And so really, we should have covered this last time. We're coming towards the end of the year, the end of the cinematic year, awards season. So we really should have had a state of play update in our last episode. But as you will have heard, I got too stuck talking about Kevin Smith and Mrs. Brown, and so we didn't have that. So we'll maybe look ahead now, because we're coming up for the final few weeks of the year. Most of the bad movies that are going to be out have come out, so maybe a preview to what we are expecting for the 2024 Razzies.
Yeah.
It's an odd one in that we surely have a contender. Like there should be a front runner in that a sequel to a Razzie winning film. In fact, the film that won last year, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, has a sequel, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. No sequel has ever won a Razzie, has it? Like 50 Shades won, but the sequels didn't ever win the top.
A Transformers film we watched was a sequel.
A sequel has won, but like he doesn't double dip of like once you win your Razzie.
No, we're not getting to
we're not winning Transformers 3, whatever.
No.
So you don't think Winnie the Pooh has? Do you rate the chances?
No,
the second one was meant to be quite good. Apparently.
I don't think it's going to be even in the nominations.
Yeah.
Even despite it does look good. I've seen some things. I'm quite excited for it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I like the upgrades.
Yeah.
It's what
Feature special, Winnie the Pooh 2.
Well, it's what I've said to you with like even the shitty Terrifier movies. I like Step Up. I like seeing things use your budget. It's everything I said when we watched the film. Yeah. Use your fucking money, don't blow it, and yeah. So I don't think it'll be there at all.
Okay, so I have some information for you about the Winnie the Pooh universe, because obviously we know the guy who made Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is making like the Pinocchio movie, whatever. And I looked it up just out of curiosity. I looked up, I guess, like, what do you call it? Like the public domain cinematic universe. And it's kind of like poetic justice in that he has been Winnie the Pooh himself.
Okay.
Of like, this is what happens if the success of your film is based entirely around public domain characters doing things they shouldn't, then there's no way to stand out from the crowd, because there are just hundreds upon hundreds of these movies.
We knew it was coming as well. We knew it, because once you're in the copyright-free public domain, you're up free grabs.
So Piglet Rising, which is actually a short as opposed to a feature. Deep in the hills of Appalachia, a group of hikers embark on a weekend adventure only to be hunted by a feral man known as Piglet. All these movies are just like, oh, what if a slasher villain had the branding of a beloved children's character? We, of course, have the Mouseboat Massacre, which is the Steamboat Willie one. I don't know if this is actually the Steamboat Willie one, or if this is just one of several Steamboat Willie.
This is the one this is the name of this. Mouseboat Massacre is the one I've heard of, or Mickey Mouseboat Massacre. Could have been a knockoff, but
well, there's also you'll have heard of the Popeye one. That's going to be one that's like, what if Popeye was a slasher? So are we speaking about Popeye the Slayer Man 2025, or are we speaking about Popeye, which is also, and their poster even says Pops the Slayer Man.
Yeah.
These look like they are the same film, but
they're not.
They're not.
No.
Which I guess it's just like it seems like this is where we're at with AI. The world has just been flooded with all of these indistinguishable IP slasher films. It's also Mickey's Sleigh House.
Yeah. But you know what? The OG guy, the Pooh guy, will have the credentials to at least get his released probably in a theater.
So he's gonna get.
So he out of all of them, he might keep his head above the water.
He's all right in that, like, he's got a head start.
Yeah.
So I agree. He's probably fine for the next 3 films.
Yeah.
But after that,
you're fucked.
It's done.
As soon as it's done, it's done. But you're gonna get money.
In fact, so the only ones he has on the slate are Bambi the Reckoning, Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, and Pinocchio Unstrung. I feel like those are less than he had last time we looked. So I don't know if they've maybe they've MCU'd this.
And
like he has nothing beyond
he's only
25.
producing them as well.
Yeah, and these are all like in post, basically.
Because I don't know if he directed.
No, he didn't.
No.
He's not directing all of them. He's only directing Pinocchio.
His main ones, yeah.
And there's nothing on the slate beyond 2025.
Take
Because I
money,
think
run.
wisely they're like the market's going to be saturated with these pieces of crap.
It's only going to get worse.
Like, yeah.
Every year ticks over, we're going to get more and more the main characters.
Yeah. It's funny that these people come from the world of B movies and like Sharknado and Shark versus Octopus and whatever.
Transmorphers.
And yeah, exactly. And for a brief moment, there was like a wormhole that opened, which allowed one of them to sneak out into the mainstream. And now everyone's just burst through, so the mainstream has become.
But as we know from the Sharknadoes, as we know from the Epic Date movies, they'll get flooded and they'll die. And we'll get 5 years out of them in the next.
We're not even going to get 5 years.
In total, from Blood and Honey 1 to the end, 5 years.
So Blood and Honey 1 was what, 2023? No, I think by 2026 these are not going to be...
I think they'll still fart them out. They just won't be doing anything. Right, what's next?
There's also the Mousetrap. Welcome to the Mickeyverse.
Grim.
Say goodbye to the Mickeyverse. There's Hook.
David Crosby's not in this one, though.
I don't want to give this guy the publicity of saying his name on the podcast, but he's like one of the auteurs behind like all of his films are these kind of like crap.
Just crap. Straight to the bin.
There is the naughty list of Mr. Scrooge,
okay,
which I like to think of Jim Henson seeing this and be like, violence, Mr. Scrooge, Bob Cratchit shouldn't be committing acts of violence. They made my Muppets kill Michael Caine. And then there is Mickey versus Winnie.
Grim.
A century after two convicts are swallowed by a cursed forest, a group of ex-reformed school survivalists reunite at their decaying hell camp.
Ex-reformed school survivalists. That is a weird, clunky line, isn't it?
Their trip spirals into terror as the convicts rise as mutated, twisted childhood icons. Again, why do they always have to be mutated and twisted?
That sounds like an AI generated
100%.
title there,
yeah.
actually.
Yeah. And I saw one, so I was just looking through IMDb on these things, and there was one that was like, Pooniverse Monsters Assemble. They've used the Avengers typeface. It's interesting how like just some of them seem like they're skirting. See, again, there's like a million films that I'm like, Mickey's Mousetrap. Did we not read that out? Or did we read out Mouse of Horrors?
Well, that one's from the producer of Terrifier 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, someone's made a list.
A lot of them could be in production as well, but might not make it to the end, to the finishing line.
Yeah, I don't know. They've got like cast listed and things, so like they're some way along.
Screamboat, and that might have been the one I heard. That rings a bell.
That's like, it's difficult just because there's so many of them, like Cinderella's Revenge, Cinderella's Curse. How do you tell the difference? And I was just on IMDb and it was suggesting all of them to me, and it suggested
2 Humpty Dumpty movies, for fuck's sake. The Curse of Humpty Dumpty and the Legend of Humpty Dumpty. No, the Madness of Humpty Dumpty. There's 3.
And yeah, there's just like, it suggested a bunch of them to me on IMDb, and the thing that made me laugh was, I think this was another short one. Someone has made a slasher movie about Fiona from Shrek, and I love the idea of someone who does something for some dumbass director who plows all these resources, and then they're like, no, you idiot, it's meant to be public domain. Fiona's still, oh no, we've been sued by DreamWorks. And just get bankrupt.
There was only 2 characters we couldn't take from Shrek, and you took one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't take Shrek, you know.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's just an incredibly bleak world. A part of me, I, like you said, a part of me is optimistic that it's going to burn out pretty quick, but a part of me is pessimistic in that like it's not going to burn out. This is just going to be like bargain buckets will just have these things now until the end of time.
Well, I still think they come in waves. They will. There is an audience on streaming for this shit. Yeah. Just like there was an audience for Steven Seagal DVDs in my house in 2005.
Yeah.
Of course, there until people actually just skip and don't show them on Tubi or Amazon Primes and all this.
Yeah. Just, I don't know, the porn parodyification of cinema is like, we're getting all these things. Where's my B-movie ripoff of Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
That's what I want. So, yeah, I don't know. It remains to be seen how much these things play a part in the future of the Razzies. Like, now that the floodgates have been opened, does Mr. Razzie nominate?
I don't think. I mean, yeah, he's stupid to open the floodgates. I said that before. I didn't think it should have been there. But, you know, this is a man that will flip-flop quickly. We're back onto
Hollywood productions, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck.
Okay, so yeah, that's been our update on the state of the industry. And that is the end of this episode. So if you have enjoyed listening, then please leave us a review. If you want to get in touch with us, then we can be reached at watchingworstfilms@gmail.com. You can follow us at Watching Worst on social media. And yeah, get in touch if you have seen Saturday Night, if you have any thoughts on this film, if you have any suggestions on things that you would like us to cover for future specials. And if you have any predictions for the upcoming Razzies, then let us know. If there's any, I don't know, like, I'm speaking mostly for myself as opposed to you, but we're in the part of the year now where I'm trying to do my catch up. I'm like, okay, what are the good and bad things I should be watching? So if there's anything that you want to make sure is on me and Kyle's radar, give us a shout. And I can't speak for Kyle, but I certainly will probably watch it. So yeah, let us know.
Absolutely.
And we will be back to you next week, as we've now got an irregular schedule, which is based solely on me being in Aberdeen, or the whims of when me and Kyle can get together. And Kyle, do you want to reveal what we are returning next week with?
We're keeping it in my theme, isn't it? I told you the podcast was going to change, but it's finally time. It's time for the grand reveal. It's Pat, 1994 Julia Sweeney classic.
Trans Month of Awareness you're celebrating with non-binary icon Pat.
I said it to you before. I think the transition of a film that shows Lauren at his peak as a genius creative to what Lauren produces 20 years later is perfect.
You know what? I don't want to add another half an hour to this podcast, but like something which like I don't like in biopics is when they do the Indiana Jones thing of they're just like, hey, everything iconic about this person happened has an explanation, or like everything that you know throughout an entire lifetime has its origin in like a 2-hour period of like, this movie's really good in that, like, an example is like John Ronson speaks about the Karen Carpenter story, where Karen Carpenter reads the review. It's like, the chubby Carpenter, and she goes, chubby? There's not too much foreshadowing. There's like no foreshadowing in Saturday Night.
No.
What I might have had is Lauren like coming up with the idea of it's Pat and just be like,
I would have had it, you know that TikTok trend of foreshadowing where you cut in really quick, like have Julia Sweeney throughout it, you know, and he's panicking. I don't have any ideas.
A 10-year-old girl is like,
I just quick cut. You can see the future. It's coming.
I'd have something like, oh, you know, like Lauren, like one of my friends wants to join the show, like a cast member, Pat. And it's like, well, I'm reading the CV, but where's the headshot? Pat, I can't tell who the hell, what gender they meant to be. Is this a guy? Is this a girl?
It's Defoe saying, what's your show? It's, you know, it's New York. It's Saturday Night. It's Pat.
Okay, so come back next week for our much awaited review of Razzie Classic It's Pat.
We're back into the Razzies.